Konami, one of the biggest falls from grace in all of video games. Once known as one of the greatest game companies of all time, definers of genres and creators of instant classics, have in recent years been reduced to mobile games and pachinko machines. But I'm not here to talk about their recent failings. I'm here to talk about a game that they created and released upon the world in the mid-80s. Castlevania. The Castlevania series is actually an interesting case for me, as I had known about the series growing up, but I only tried the first game a tiny bit in 2013, but that was when I sucked at games, so I never made it past the second area. But 3 years later, I got the first game on my 3DS with the intention of getting to the end, and I actually managed to do it and defeat Dracula. And I've recently been binging the series again for October this year, so I figured, why not do a little one-off review of the original game? Give myself an excuse to replay it, maybe see how it holds up as a standalone title. Castlevania was unleashed upon Japan on September 25th, 1986 for the Famicom Disk System, and a month later, a sibling title was released on the MSX2 titled Vampire Killer. America would later get Castlevania on the NES on May 1st, 1987, with Europe getting it right in time for Christmas. This game didn't receive many ports, so I get to take a break from discussing that for now, but it did see a number of retellings and remakes, which I think I'll save for another time, mainly because I haven't fully played Vampire Killer or even touched Castlevania Chronicles. So let's just jump into the NES original, why don't we? I know I've started with the story in my previous reviews, but Castlevania's story is kinda 80s action game levels of simple. The year is 1691, and once every century, Count Dracula and his army of the undead, alongside his entire castle, return to Transylvania to spread chaos for the people of the region. But every time Dracula rises, a member of the Belmont clan, a long-running lineage of demon hunters, steps up to take down the Count, with the next in line being the iconic Simon Belmont. And this is where the story takes a backseat for the gameplay. I do enjoy the concept here, but as the series continues, later games do a much better job fleshing it all out. But I won't knock this game for it since these cartridges don't exactly hold a lot of data, so having a more basic A to B narrative was commonplace in this era. So let's see what that A to B is all about. Simon's controls don't come off as anything too special at first. Jump with A and attack with B, but it's not as easy to master as that made it sound. Simon's weapon of choice is a whip, the Belmont's signature Vampire Killer. It being a whip means there's a delay when pressing the button before the attack connects, but the delay is less than a second. It's jumping where this game's infamy comes from. Unlike most platformer heroes from around this era, Simon cannot influence his momentum after leaving the ground. Unless you get smacked by an enemy, you are dedicated to that jump arc, so make every jump count and try to avoid enemies during platforming sections since attacking will often leave you open to getting hit yourself. But the Vampire Killer isn't your only method of offense. By breaking open candles, it's possible to find upgrades that transform the Vampire Killer into the Morning Star, which doubles your offensive power to make tougher enemies go down faster. Finding another upgrade will increase its length, making it so you have much more reach to hit enemies with it. You can also find hearts inside of candles or by defeating enemies. These are used to fuel your sub-weapons, which you can use by holding up and hitting the attack button. The hearts do not recover your health. That job is done by pot roast you find inside walls. I'd make a joke about this, but basically every YouTuber has at this point. Anyway, the sub-weapons are great. They're mainly just a means to give Simon a projectile, but almost all of them are extremely useful in my opinion. I may not get much use out of the throwing knife because it's weaker than the regular whip, but the throwing axe is good for anti-air. The cross doesn't disappear upon hitting an enemy, making it great for crowd control. The stopwatch freezes all regular enemies in place completely. But my favorite is the holy water. Just smash the ball on the ground and it spontaneously combusts. What kind of blessing was this given exactly? Well, whatever it was, it completely stuns anything it hits, including bosses, and even hits multiple times. I pretty much always stick with the holy water unless there's a lot of birds around, in which case I'll probably grab a throwing axe if I can get one. There's also some rarer items, such as an urn to make you invincible, a crucifix to wipe out everything on screen, double and triple shot, which allow you to have multiple instances of your sub-weapon on screen, and these bags of money that do nothing but give you points. I think that covers all the gameplay elements, so let's move on to talking about the individual stages like I always do. You start off by entering Dracula's castle via the conveniently unlocked front entrance. And this first area is pretty simple. The zombies and panthers aren't exactly tough enemies, and while the fishmen might take you by surprise at first, you shouldn't have too much trouble with them. It ends with a fight against the phantom bat, who thanks to the throwing axe is a complete joke. The next block has you enter a chapel apparently, but I don't fully see it myself. This block also introduces the infamous Medusa heads, which fly in a wave pattern, and combined with the amount of bottomless pits and knockback in this stage, you're gonna be hearing that death jingle far too often. The boss of this stage is the Queen Medusa, whose attack pattern I don't actually remember because you can just spam holy water to stop her from doing anything. Yeah, this works. You then exit into the castle ruins, where an army of fleamen are here to ruin your day. There's also skeletons that throw bones in your direction, but they're much easier to avoid. The fleamen just jump around wildly. Another new enemy that this stage introduces is the bone pillars. They shoot fire at you, but it's not too bad because you can actually whip out the flames. This block is a lot more straightforward than the last one. It has some pits, yeah, but not enough to give you as much trouble. The boss this time around is two mummies, and yeah, this one actually killed me. I can't pinpoint a pattern for these guys, honestly, I just whip them until they go down. Simon then gets tossed down a really long pit that probably should have killed him, but he survives and has to navigate the underground caverns to make his escape back to the ruins, where eagles sick more fleamen all over him. Great! This block is actually incredibly short, to be honest. It caps off with a fight against Frankenstein's monster who... yeah, I stunlocked this one with the holy water too. After this, we have the dungeon, my most hated block in this entire game. My footage from this block alone is 1.5 gigabytes. That's how much I died, because this place is ridiculous. There's more fleamen, we now have axe armors who are extremely tough, and they come in twos sometimes. Your best bet to even beat this stage, honestly, is to get a triple shot holy water, which requires you to not die once throughout the entire stage because the boss is so hard. And this last hallway before the boss of this block is extremely infamous among many players, because this is where they throw two axe armors at you, and also a bunch of Medusa heads coming at you from both sides of the screen, so good luck getting past here without getting hit. I dare you. Someone's probably already done it, I know. This leads us to the final clock tower block, which is the hardest part of the entire game. It starts out with 6 copies of the Phantom Bat right at the start, and then more eagles and fleamen await ya. But it's actually shorter than block 4. It's really just a war of endurance. You'll get through it eventually if you just keep bashing your head against the wall and try to find new ways around all the obstacles. Once you reach the grand staircase where Dracula awaits you, you don't have to do the stage anymore because you'll start right here after a game over. Dracula is a pretty tough boss at first, seeing as he can take you down really quickly, but his first phase isn't that hard to dodge once you really know what to do. But knowing what to do kinda requires dying to him a bunch. His second phase, though, I stunlock with the holy water. I don't know how to fight this one, I just do this every time. Game complete. I know I should have saved talking about the final boss for the end of the video, but I don't know, I don't see much of a point in a game with such minimal story. But what's left to talk about in this game? Well, I really like the music. As I stated in the X3 video, it's done by Kinuyo Yamashita, and I really like this music a lot. My favorites being Poison Mind, Vampire Killer, Wicked Child, Out of Time, and Voyager. Also, for an NES game, the backgrounds are actually really well done. There's a lot of detail and everything, and it looks nice. Now, as a standalone game, I think Castlevania is actually really fun. Yeah, it suffers from a lot of 80s archaic design choices, and the stiff control can be a turnoff for some people, but I find it really fun to master just because of it. I know my perspective is slightly skewed because I can go back to stuff like Megami Tensei with no issue, but I still think this game isn't as hard as many others. I can actually beat this one unlike Ghosts and Goblins, so that's something at least. I would actually recommend trying this game out if you can. Now, I don't have plans to play any of the other Castlevania games at the moment, but maybe next Halloween I'll do another one. Maybe a few. I don't know, there's also that Gregory Horror Show game I kinda promised a bunch of people to play, I'm sorry. Okay, maybe that's gonna be next year. But for the time being, I gotta get back to Mega Man X. So, I hope everyone had a great Halloween, and I'll see you all with Mega Man X4. Hopefully before the year ends, but I wouldn't count on it.